Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we really got into the historical background and the core concepts of pulse diagnosis. But now I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty. Those
Mm.
29 pulse qualities. You mentioned it's like learning a secret code?
Exactly. Each quality offers a unique insight into what's happening energetically inside the body. So we'll start with Masayoshi's 8 basic categories. They're the foundation for understanding the more nuanced qualities.
Okay, a roadmap. Perfect. Where do we begin?
The first 4 actually describe the pulse's depth and speed. Floating, deep, slow, and rapid. These are considered like the most fundamental qualities because they directly relate to the 8 principles, the foundation of diagnosis in Chinese medicine.
Mm. The 8 principles, we touched on those earlier. Maybe a quick recap would be helpful.
Sure.
How do they actually connect to these basic pulse qualities?
The 8 principles categorize imbalances. They encompass yin-yang, interior-exterior, cold-heat, and deficiency-excess. And each of these principles is reflected in the qualities of the pulse.
Can you give an example?
Oh, absolutely. A floating pulse feels like it's just beneath the skin, easily detected with light pressure. It often indicates an exterior condition, like a cold or the flu, where a pathogen is affecting the body's surface. In contrast, a deep pulse, that one requires a firmer pressure to feel, and it suggests an interior condition where the imbalance is deeper within the body.
Okay, so the depth of the pulse gives us clues about the location of the imbalance, whether it's more on the surface or internal. What about the speed of the pulse? How do the slow and rapid pulses fit into the 8 principles?
Slow and rapid pulses relate to the cold heat principle. A slow pulse, typically fewer than 60 beats per minute in an adult, suggests a cold condition. Think about it. Things slow down in cold weather. On the other hand, a rapid pulse, usually over 90 beats per minute, suggests a heat condition, reflecting that accelerated pace we see with heat.
Okay, so we've got the depth and the speed covered, connecting to 4 of the 8 principles. What about those other 4 categories you mentioned?
Those focus on the pulse's strength, shape, and flow. Empty, full, slippery, and choppy.
All right, tell me about those qualities and how they relate to the remaining 8 principles.
Let's see. An empty pulse feels weak and soft, like a balloon that doesn't have enough air in it. It indicates a deficiency of qi, or blood, which reflects the deficiency principle. But a full pulse, that one feels really strong and bounding, like a taut rope. That suggests an excess condition, which could be an accumulation of pathogens or stagnation of qi in blood, maybe even an excess of heat.
Got it. So empty and full, those relate to the deficiency excess principle, just like floating and deep relate to interior exterior, and slow and rapid relate to cold heat. What about those last 2 you mentioned, slippery and choppy? They sound, I don't know, kind of unusual.
Yeah, they definitely have their own distinct characteristics. A slippery pulse, it feels really smooth and flowing, kind of like a ball bearing rolling under your fingers. And it often indicates dampness or phlegm, which are considered pathogenic substances in Chinese medicine. They obstruct the flow of qi,
Hmm.
so they affect its smooth movement.
So it's like the chi is encountering some kind of, I don't know, energetic sludge, preventing it from flowing freely.
That's a great way to visualize it. And then there's the choppy pulse. That one feels rough, irregular, it's hesitant, almost like a skipping record. And this one often suggests a deficiency of blood, especially in women, or a deficiency of essence, particularly in men.
I love these descriptions. They're so vivid. I can almost feel them in my mind's eye as you're talking about them.
That's what's so great about pulse diagnosis.
Yeah.
It engages all of our senses.
Right.
It invites us to cultivate a deeper awareness of the body's subtle language. But it's important to remember these 8 categories, they're really just the starting point.
Right, because you said there's actually 29 distinct pulse qualities. So
Mhm.
how do those additional qualities come into play?
Well, think of those 8 basic categories as if they were primary colors. We can mix them together to create a whole spectrum of shades that reflect this intricate tapestry of the human body and its imbalances.
So it's like we have this painter's palette of pulse qualities with all these different combinations possible. Can you give me an example of one of those combined qualities and how it might present in practice?
Sure. Let's look at the wiry pulse. It often feels like a taut guitar string. Superficial, hard, springy. It resists pressure.
Ooh, I like that imagery.
Right. So what basic categories does the wiry pulse fall under? Well, it's considered a full pulse because of its strength, because it resists pressure,
Hmm.
but it's also a liver pulse because it frequently indicates a liver imbalance, like liver qi stagnation or liver fire.
Okay, so the wiry pulse tells us both about the overall energetic state, which in this case is excess, but it also directs our attention to a specific organ system, which in this case is the liver.
Exactly. That's the power of understanding these combined qualities. They provide a much richer, more detailed picture of what's happening energetically within the body.
Got it. Can you give me another example of a combined pulse quality?
Sure. Let's consider the soggy pulse. This one feels soft, weak, like a wet sponge. It combines aspects of both floating and empty.
So it's both superficial and deficient.
Precisely. This often indicates yang deficiency with dampness. So the yang deficiency makes it weak, and the dampness gives it that superficial, soggy quality.
So each of those 29 qualities has its own unique blend of those basic characteristics and then specific patterns that it might be indicating.
Right, and as practitioners gain experience, they develop this nuanced understanding of all these qualities. Much like a musician develops this really refined ear for these subtle variations in tone and pitch.
You know, that actually makes me think of the pulse like a musical instrument, with each quality creating a different sound or a rhythm.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
The pulse is a symphony of vibrations, reflecting either harmony or disharmony within the body.
I love that. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued to learn more about all 29 qualities. It sounds like Masayoshi's book is going to be my new best friend. But for now, could we focus on a few specific examples, maybe some qualities that are particularly relevant to heart health? Earlier, you were talking about how the pulse can reveal both the emotional and the physical aspects of the heart.
Absolutely. Because the pulse is such a direct reflection of heart chi, any imbalances in this energy are going to show up in its qualities.
Right, okay. But can the pulse also indicate those structural or functional problems with the heart, the kind that would be diagnosed with Western medicine?
It can. Certain qualities can be like red flags that prompt us to investigate further. For instance, a very slow pulse, particularly if it's irregular, might suggest a problem with the heart's conduction. A minute or scattered pulse, one that's extremely faint and really difficult to detect, could indicate a serious issue like heart failure.
Wow. So even in the case of those severe heart problems, the pulse can offer some valuable clues. Are there other qualities that might suggest serious cardiovascular issues?
Yes. Masayosha describes a pulse that's very full, slippery, wiry, overflowing, and rapid as a potential indicator of an aortic aneurysm. He shares a case study in his book about this man who came in for treatment for a frozen shoulder, but his pulse revealed this much more serious condition.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, the practitioner recognized those warning signs and urged him to see a cardiologist, which led to a timely diagnosis and treatment.
That's a powerful reminder of how important pulse diagnosis can be, even when the presenting symptoms seem totally unrelated.
It really underscores the value of checking the pulse in every patient, regardless of their main complaint, because it can reveal so much about their overall well-being, even conditions they might not even be aware of.
Absolutely. It sounds like we've really only scratched the surface of what pulse diagnosis can tell us about the heart.
Right.
But I'm also curious about other organs. Can it offer insights into the well-being of other organ systems as well?
Absolutely. Masayosha actually dedicates a whole chapter in his book to exploring these different pulse positions in detail. He outlines the qualities that might suggest imbalances in specific organs.
So it's like we have this specialized pulse dictionary for each organ, with a unique set of qualities to look for.
Yeah, you could say that, but
Sure.
it's important to remember that pulse diagnosis is really an art of synthesis. We're not just looking for isolated qualities in specific positions. We're considering the whole picture. We're weaving together the depth, the speed, the strength, the shape, the flow to create this holistic understanding of the person's overall energetic state.
It sounds like such an intricate puzzle,
It is.
with each pulse quality acting as a little clue.
Precisely. And as we become more skilled, we learn how to read these subtle signs, how to connect the dots, and how to arrive at a much deeper understanding of the body's intricate communication system.
This is all so fascinating. But I'm also realizing that this isn't something you can just master overnight. It sounds like it takes years of dedicated study and practice to really become proficient at pulse diagnosis.
Definitely. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to cultivate sensitivity. Masayosha, he recommends a very systematic approach to pulse taking. First, feeling the pulse as a whole, assessing the 3 sections and 3 levels of pressure, observing the overall quality, and finally examining each individual position in detail.
So it's this step-by-step process of really refining our perception. And attuning our senses to the body's subtle language.
Exactly. And I think one of the most valuable aspects of learning pulse diagnosis is that it really trains us to become more attentive to those subtle cues that our bodies are constantly giving us. It's like developing a deeper conversation with ourselves
Mm.
and with our patients.
I love that. So it's not just about diagnosing disease, but about deepening that connection to the wisdom of the body.
Exactly. And that's what makes pulse diagnosis such a profound and rewarding art to study and practice.
Absolutely. Okay, this has been an amazing journey into the world of these pulse qualities. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have one more question that's been lingering in my mind. Masayosha mentions that external factors, things like medication, can actually influence the pulse.
Hmm.
How does that affect the accuracy of diagnosis?
That's an important consideration. Certain medications, especially those that affect the cardiovascular system, can definitely alter the pulse. For example, beta blockers, which are often prescribed for high blood pressure, those can make the pulse slower. Diuretics, which increase urine output, can make the pulse empty at that deep level.
So practitioners really need to be aware of their patients' medications when they're interpreting the pulse.
Absolutely. It's crucial to take into account anything that might be influencing the pulse, including medications, lifestyle habits, recent activities. Context is key.
That makes sense. This has been incredibly enlightening. We've explored the basic principles, we've delved into those specific qualities, we've even talked about those limitations and factors that can influence the pulse.
We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope it's given you a deeper appreciation for just how complex and nuanced pulse diagnosis really is.
I'm definitely feeling more informed,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to see how we can apply all this knowledge to real-world situations.
Yeah, me too. That's where the magic happens.